Hello and welcome to our Living Well with Baby workshop. My name is Bethany and I'm a psychological wellbeing practitioner here at Wellbeing Suffolk, and I'll be presenting today's webinar. We're presenting a lot of information in this webinar and it may feel like you are not able to take it all in at one go, but don't worry about that because you can pause or come back to the recording, revisit it at any time whenever you need to. Before we begin today's webinar, I just want to have a quick talk on risk and safety, and that is just that our service is not a crisis team, so we're not available at any time to talk if you felt at risk. So if you did currently have any plans or intent to harm yourself or end your life, please know that you're not alone and you can contact the following services for support. You can call 111 and click option 2, and that will take you through to a trained mental health professional at any time of day. You can also call the Samaritans, you can speak to your GP, and if you're concerned about a child or a young person, then you can also contact a Childline. So the aims of today's workshop are as follows. We're first just going to really understand the changes that happen when you have a new baby. We'll talk through and try and make sense of how these changes can leave you feeling trapped in negative cycles, particularly around your mood and your well-being. We'll then look at some strategies to manage low mood and worry, some tips and tricks that you can have a go at. And overall, I really just want this session to be a place where we can normalise your thoughts and feelings in such a difficult time and such a massive life adjustment that you're experiencing. So the first half of today's presentation will be looking at the experiences and sometimes challenges of having a new baby. The media and society portray that life with a young baby or child is a joyful time, but this is not always the case all of the time. It's really common to have problems in pregnancy and postnatally. Just like any change, it can have an array of impacts in different areas of our lives, including our mental health. It could be a really joyous time to welcome a new life, but it could be a very challenging and stressful time. And so today's session will be looking through the different changes and the different impacts that you've been having, and in turn ways that we can help support you. When it comes to living life with a new baby, one of the main areas we can notice an impact is our mental health, and it's extremely common. In fact, approximately 10 to 20% of women and men during pregnancy and in the first year after having a baby struggle with mental health difficulties, whether that's low mood or anxiety. And one of the biggest things I want you to take away from today's session is that you're not alone. It's a huge life adjustment having a new baby, whether it's your first baby or whether this is baby number 5. Either way, it's a massive adjustment and it's going to have a knock-on effect on how we're feeling. And sometimes we can have good days, we can have bad days, and so we're really just here to try and help figure out how we can navigate through this challenging time. Here are some common parent sayings that we've heard from a multitude of different people. And all I want you to do is just have a read through these and think about, do any of these relate to your own experiences? Have you had similar thoughts? And if so, how did they make you feel? I'm going to give you a bit of time now where you can just pause the video and really just reflect on how these make you feel. We're now going to talk about some common mental health experiences that parents can have after the birth of a child. In particular, we're going to talk about the difference between baby blues and postnatal depression. Feel free to pause the video now and think about how you would explain the differences between the two, or if you know the difference between the two. So first of all, we have baby blues, which is extremely common. In fact, up to 80% of people can experience it after the birth of a child, and it tends to kick in a few days after birth. And it can vary in length. Some people only have baby blues for a couple days, others can have it up to maximum about 10 days, and then it starts to fade. And the most common symptoms that people experience with baby blues is feeling quite anxious, exhaustion, difficulty sleeping, a lot of tearfulness. A lot of people report just crying for no reason and just being unable to stop, and just having a feeling of being overwhelmed. And then we have postnatal depression, PND. With postnatal depression, it can affect between 10 to 15 people in every 100 people. So it's actually a lot more common than people realise. And with postnatal depression, it usually occurs around the 6-week mark post-birth, but it can actually happen a lot later, sort of months after the birth of your child. And with these symptoms, they tend to persist for longer, whereas baby blues can last up to about 10 days. Postnatal depression can last for weeks or sometimes even months and can be really distressing. With it, the most common symptoms are feeling low, helpless, tearful, a loss of interest in things that maybe you used to really enjoy, a massive lack of energy, poor sleep, feeling very anxious. You may even notice a lower self-esteem, a lack in confidence compared to before you had your baby. A lot of parents with postnatal depression notice that they tend to avoid people and withdraw themselves from friends and loved ones. They can even sometimes struggle to bond with the baby. And at times as well, it can be common to have thoughts of harming yourself. And when it comes to these thoughts, they can be really distressing and scary to have. But know that it's not unusual to have thoughts that life is not worth it or thoughts of harming yourself. The important thing to know is that if you have thoughts like these, you can reach out to someone to have support. If you ever feel that you might act upon these thoughts, there is always someone that you can reach out to, just as I mentioned earlier with calling 111 or your GP. Because when it comes to our mental health, it's really distressing in the moment, it feels all-encompassing, but in reality, with the right treatment support, most people can make a full recovery, and that's entirely what services like ours are for and other mental health services who can help out. Becoming pregnant and having a baby brings a lot of different changes, and those changes can have differing impacts on us. So we're now going to go through the different changes that are common for people to experience. But before we do, I want you to have a think about what examples of changes can you think of that you've been through. Spend a bit of time now reflecting on what you've experienced and the different areas of your life that you've noticed changes on. Now that you've had a bit of time to think about the changes you've noted within yourself, we're now going to go through common changes that people report in times of having a baby. And the first area that we notice changes is to our thoughts. A lot of times our thoughts can become quite negative, whether they're about ourselves or how we're coping. We can notice a lot of doubting ourselves more and even start questioning our identity. As you can see from the slides, there are a couple different examples of thoughts that people can have during this period. And just think to yourself, do these relate to what you've experienced? How have you noticed your thoughts have changed? Really just think about what your thoughts were like before having the baby versus now. Have you noticed any negative thought habits kicking in? Another area of change we notice is to our emotions. New babies will bring about new feelings. Everyone will feel differently, and it's completely normal to feel anxious, stressed, tearful, worried, even regretful at times. And we can experience a lot of new emotions that maybe we've not had before. And there's a variety of different things that can impact how we feel. Sometimes childbirth, we can have quite a traumatic and painful childbirth that can bring back memories that can be quite difficult. As well as this, just struggling with day-to-day new changes, the lack of sleep, the new aspect of having another person in your life, this little life that you've created that's dependent on you, can bring about a lot of emotional changes. A lot of people report almost like a sense of loss of control. Irritability is a big one. People tend to notice they get quite snappy and irritable. Stress, despair, panic at times, that anxiety bubbling up within us. And all of these emotions and feelings are perfectly normal, and you're not alone in how you're feeling at all. They can be quite scary, especially if we've not experienced them before. We can start questioning ourselves of, why am I feeling this way? Am I not coping? Another change people go through is, of course, physical changes. You've just gone through a whole 9 months of pregnancy, body growing to accommodate this new baby, and then afterwards we can still experience a lot of physical changes. People go through many changes during pregnancy and after birth, and it's not surprising that they can actually take up to a full year to recover, for everything to go back to normal. And sometimes things don't go completely back to normal how they were, and it takes a lot of time to adjust. And above are some of the experiences of things that take time to return pre-pregnancy. So there's breasts, especially with breastfeeding, that can change the shape and the feel. Then we can think about how we look because of the tiredness. With a new baby, of course, we're going to be shattered and not getting the exact same amount of sleep as we had pre-baby. So that can have an impact on how we look. could be the effects of having a C-section, sometimes the scars, or sometimes how our body looks going forwards. Very common for women is excessive hair loss, and that can last up to about 12 months. There's the extra weight, the stretch marks, there's all these changes that we go through when it comes to pregnancy that linger on afterwards. And it can be difficult sometimes to adjust to that and having this new body. What sort of the things that you've noticed sort of physically within yourself? Have a try at sort of pausing the video now and think about, are there any other physical changes you've noticed within yourself that maybe you've been struggling with? It can be easy to focus on the negatives and be very critical of our body, but it's important to remember you've just done something extraordinary. You've just made a whole person just with your body. So even though it can be difficult to adjust to all these new changes within our physical self, it's also important to give yourself time to recover. Be compassionate with yourself. You've done something so amazing. It's of course going to take time. It took time to create the baby. It's going to take time to recover and sort of get back to where we once were. Another change we notice is the changes to our relationships. We've just introduced a whole new person to our relationship. It may have gone from a two-people relationship to this third little person. So of course it's going to have an impact on how you speak to each other, how you feel about each other. When it comes to the changes in relationships, it can evoke a lot of different emotions that maybe you've not experienced. It can be a struggle to adjust to this new lifestyle of not just being partners, but parents. And there are a variety of different ways that your relationship can be impacted, as you can see above. The whole dynamic can shift. And so with it, you can notice it can take a bit of time to adjust, and this is perfectly normal. You may notice less intimacy in your relationship. You can notice that sometimes even you just miss each other. You've gone from just the two of you to now having all your priorities be on the baby. It can be hard to find the time for one another. So you can notice missing each other, struggling to adjust to these new roles. They're not just your partner anymore, they're now the father of your child or the mother of your child. Sometimes you can feel a bit like a spare part, especially when one parent goes back to work and the other one stays at home. Sometimes there can be some resentment there, whether it's the parent staying at home, resenting the parent who got to go back to work, have their identity back, have that sort of space to be them again. Whilst at the same time, the parent who went to work maybe would get a bit resentful of the one who got to stay at home, who got to spend more time with the baby. There's so many different dynamics and changes that is going on, and it can be difficult to adjust to, and in turn it can lead to disagreements. We've got a lot of high emotions going on with a new baby. All these hormonal changes as well can lead to higher levels of irritability, and we tend to take that out on the people closest to us. So we may notice a lot more snappiness or arguments, which can make us feel really bad afterwards, or can make us feel quite isolated. But this is perfectly normal. You're going through this whole massive adjustment. Of course there's going to be changes, and it takes time. You've now got to learn this whole new role, this whole new lifestyle. So it may be a bit difficult at the start, but it's important to communicate on these times. Talk about how you're feeling, even if it's just venting to your partner. Get it out. Don't let it sort of sit within you, because 9 times out of 10 they're probably having the exact same thoughts and feelings you are. And so it could be really helpful to remember that you're a team in this. You're not alone. They can help you, you can help them, and that will make things so much easier as long as we can communicate and feel safe. So the next change we notice is the change in our identity, which I actually brought up earlier. When it comes to people, we have a multitude of different identities, whether that's we identify as a friend, an employee, a musician, something we love. We have all these different aspects of ourselves that we identify as. And now, with a new baby, we've got a whole new identity of mother, father, parent. And this particular identity comes with a lot of pre-existing expectations from society, but also ourselves. And a lot of the times, these expectations are often very high and also very much unrealistic. And if we don't feel that we are meeting these expectations, we can often tend to feel like a failure. And when we feel like a failure, that can lead to low mood. We can start doubting ourselves, feeling really bad, thinking that we're not coping, that we're not good enough. And we can get caught up in these cycles. But when it comes to this identity, of course we're going to have some time that we're going to need to adjust to it. It's completely normal to struggle to come to terms with this whole new person we're becoming, because we're very much thrown into the deep end. There's no sort of training to become a parent. It's suddenly, I have a baby, now I've got to learn to be the mother, the father, the parent. And so it's so important to just be kind to yourself and perhaps even just lower your expectations of yourself. Don't forget that you're learning something completely new, and that's going to take time. You're not going to be perfect right off the bat. It's going to take time to learn, to adjust, to get into that routine and figure out everything that goes forwards. What I want you to do is really just think about, what expectations did you have before having your baby versus sort of how you are now with the baby? Are there any differences there that you notice within yourself? Do you think with these expectations, were they too high? And if they were, how helpful actually were they to have those expectations? Thinking back on it, would you make any changes? Do you think you would sort of change the way you thought about that identity, what you should and shouldn't be doing? So just have a bit of time to think. Pause here, think about the expectations you had versus sort of now. And now once you've had that time to think, how do you feel it would go if you would lower your expectations of yourself? How do you think that would change how you see yourself as a parent now? Because so many times we put these high expectations on of all the things that we need to do. I need to do A, B, and C, and that will make me the perfect parent. But in reality, having a baby is difficult. There's lots of things that we go through, lots of challenges. You're throwing sleep deprivation on top of that. We're not always going to be able to achieve everything that we want to. So if we set more realistic goals, because at the end of the day, all your baby needs is love, warmth, food, clothes. That's about it. As long as you have those, you've got a happy baby. So take that step back, be kinder to yourself. Really just set little goals that are realistic that you can meet each day, and just know that you're trying your best. You're doing this whole new thing, you're learning this whole new role, and it's going to take time, and you're not alone in it. There's other people who are going through the exact same thing, who are struggling with the same identity changes, that you can ask for help. You don't have to go through this by yourself. You've got mothers, fathers, family, friends who have gone through this identity change themselves. Ask them what they did, what they found helpful. So overall, all of these changes are absolutely normal. So many people go through these changes because it's a massive life adjustment having a baby. There may be people who are watching this workshop at the exact same time you are, who are nodding along going, yep, I've noticed all those changes there, all of those feelings, all of those difficulties. And when it comes to it, with these changes, we're learning how to be this whole new person, this whole new identity. And of course, it's going to have an impact on how we feel. That's normal too. Don't think that because you're feeling low or because you're anxious that you're failing anyway. You're not. As I mentioned earlier, it's so common to struggle with our mental health when living with a baby. And so the rest of the workshop, we're going to look at how these areas can impact our mental health, and in turn, tips and tricks that you can apply into your day-to-day life to try and make it just a little bit easier for yourself. Helpful sort of evidence-based techniques that you can apply to help reduce that impact on your mood, on your anxiety levels, and live the life that you want to live. Enjoy your time with your new baby. With all these changes we experience, it can lead to impacts on our mood and well-being, and with it we can get caught in what we call the vicious cycle. So by the vicious cycle, what I mean is basically our thoughts, our feelings, our physical symptoms, and our behaviours are all connected. So as you can see here. And when these areas are affecting each other in a negative way, it can spiral into a vicious cycle that keeps low mood within our life. So our bodily symptoms of depression can lead us to feeling worse. They can lower our mood and change our routine. And so that's the exact same with our thoughts as well. If we're having unhelpful and negative thoughts, that can make us feel more depressed, and it can affect our behaviour and our routine as well. So it can go around in a cycle. So for example, if physically I was feeling really low, drained, I was not sleeping properly, I was struggling to concentrate, I wasn't really enjoying things like I used to, my thoughts are more than likely going to be more negative, because if I'm feeling low, I'm going to think more negatively. So I might notice I start having thoughts like, I'm failing, I'm not a good partner, I'm not a good parent. And then as a result, because I'm feeling so low and I'm thinking so negatively, it's going to impact my behaviours. I may notice I start withdrawing myself. I struggle to motivate myself to keep up with things I used to do. It may be that a friend invites me round, but because I'm feeling so low and I think so negatively about myself, I'll make up an excuse and I won't go. But the problem is when we stop doing the things we used to do or we struggle to do them, we actually feel more low. Because basically what we find is the lower we feel, the more negative we think, the less we do. But then the less we do, the lower we feel. And it goes round and round in this cycle. And we can very much get caught up, and it can be really difficult to break out of this cycle because it's just almost like a domino effect going round and round and round. I want you to spend a bit of time now thinking back on that vicious cycle, the example I just gave, and think about your own cycle. What sort of physical symptoms have you noticed within yourself? What kind of sort of thoughts have you noticed? Have there been any changes to your routine, your behaviour that you've been struggling with? And seem to think about, okay, how do I see my own cycle? How does it sort of interact with each other? So it could be really great if you pause the video now and you could sort of write it down following that link of going, okay, physical symptoms, thinking, behaviours, because one of the ways we can break these cycles is the first thing we need to do is really to be able to identify it, understand how our mood, our well-being is being impacted, and then in turn we'll be able to find the ways to break into it and stop it from continuing. So to help us feel better, we need to break the cycle by making positive changes to the different areas that we've acknowledged. So for example, by changing our behaviours, we can help break that cycle. By changing our thinking habits or our worries, we can break that cycle. And we find by breaking into just one of those areas that we begin to reverse the negative effects it's having on our mood and well-being. So think of it almost as cutting the ties between those areas so that they can't keep going round in that cycle. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the different areas that we can break together, little tips and tricks that you can apply into your own day-to-day life that can break your own cycle going forwards. We'll first begin with how to break the cycle by changing your behaviours. As we previously saw, when we feel low, we do less. But this avoidance can actually make us feel a lot worse. So what we want to do is change our behaviours in a really positive, gradual way in order to almost with the idea of doing more to feel better. Deliberately engaging in certain activities to activate a positive emotional state. So things that are meaningful, that are valuable for us, that we enjoy, help us push past that procrastination, that avoidance we've been experiencing. And it's particularly big when it comes to having a new baby, because our whole routine changes. Suddenly, all the free time we may have had, all the time we had to spend time with others or to do our hobbies is gone because baby needs constant watching, feeding, all of this priority time goes to them. So it can be really difficult to find the time for ourselves. And a lot of times we just tend to neglect ourselves. We'll focus on the baby and we'll forget about what we need. But in reality, we need to make sure that we have that time for ourselves. It's that whole idea of we can't pour from an empty cup. If we're running ourselves down, we're not giving ourselves that time to feel good, do the things that we want, we're going to feel really low, we're going to feel really drained, and we're going to struggle with day-to-day stuff. Whereas if we make some positive changes to what we're doing, even if it's just small little things that we add in here and there, just to boost how we're feeling, it's going to make the world of difference. So as you can see from this cycle, we're changing the behaviours, so we're adding in things that are valuable, meaningful, things that we want to do for us. Whether that's exercising again, seeing friends, doing pleasurable things. And by pleasurable things, I mean like your hobbies or interests. They can simply just be something as watching a comfort show, listening to your favourite sort of album, having a bit of a self-care night, even just putting a face mask on or having a nice bath, doing something that you enjoy. And what happens is that will start to break into that cycle. Because physically, you may notice short-term sort of tiredness, because of course you're adding something else into your routine. It might knock you out a little bit. But the positive side of it is that you're going to get that sense of achievement, that sense of fun, sense of productivity, because you're adding something for you that you need to do into your diary. And that in turn gives us that boost, that positive reinforcement. It might give us that little bit of energy or motivation. It's going to lift our mood. And when that happens, it's going to be easier to do more tasks eventually, because we get very much caught in there. The lower we feel, the less we do. So by boosting how we feel, we'll be able to do more and do things that we want to do, or even just things that we have to do that we've been struggling with. Because sometimes just routine tasks, everyday household upkeep, can be way more of an effort than it used to do because of having a new baby, the sleep deprivation, where am I going to find the time? So breaking things down, adding them in, slowly building on that routine, taking your time. Don't try and rush and do too much at once. But by making these positive changes to your behaviour, it really starts to break down that cycle and in turn will eventually help boost your mood. You're probably thinking, yeah, sounds great, but when am I possibly going to have the time to do that? Where am I going to find the time to do that? Or even the motivation with having a new baby, because my routine is long gone. It's all chopped and changed because of the baby. And I can really appreciate that. And I know it's easier said than done, but there are ways that we can adjust this to fit the lifestyle of a new parent. So to think about it then, here are some sort of what we call rules for success. So first of all, think about what are the activities that maybe you've been avoiding, maybe you've been procrastinating, putting off. Then think about, okay, so now I've got this list of activities. How can I break this down to make it easier? Because a lot of the times these tasks can be so big that we really don't have the time to fit them in. So what we can do is just break them down into easier, small first steps. So instead of having like, oh, I need to clean the whole house, that's way too daunting. So instead break it down. Maybe the goal is just today, I'm going to do the hoovering. That's the first step. That's still an achievement in itself, but you're just breaking it down to make it a little bit easier. Again, almost thinking about those expectations. Am I putting too high an expectation on myself when really we should be reaching for smaller, more achievable goals? Because that's what's going to make us feel good. You can also adjust it to sort of the baby, fit it into your lifestyle. Maybe with certain tasks you feel you can't do them because of the baby, but think about ways that maybe you can add the baby into the equation. So as you're doing your tasks and chores, maybe you can do it when it's sort of nap time, or maybe you can sort of hold the baby, have them in a carrier whilst you're doing some activities. Find ways to adjust it to fit your new lifestyle. Bit of sort of brainstorming ways that maybe you can change things up. Another good thing is to write it down. A lot of times we have all these things that we want to do, all these activities, and we think, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it sometime next week. And then it gets to tomorrow and we think, oh, I'm not feeling it. I'll do it tomorrow instead. And we keep putting it off and off and off. We procrastinate it. So it's much better to write it down. We're more likely to do things when they're written down because it gives us that incentive. And it's important to stick to the plan, not on how you're feeling. So sort of do despite how you feel. It's that whole idea of if we only ever acted in accordance to how we're feeling, and if we're feeling really tired, really low, we're never going to get anything done. We're going to keep pushing it off. So sometimes what could be helpful is just almost flipping it on its head. And instead of acting in accordance to how you're feeling, act in accordance to the plan that you've made, the task that you've set up. So if you're not feeling it, you're feeling tired, the idea would be to try and push through, make that change. Because 9 times out of 10, once we actually start an activity, those negative feelings tend to wash away because we're so distracted by the task, and we actually start to feel that good boost of, look, I'm doing it, achievement, productivity. So think for yourself, what are some kind of things that you want to be able to achieve? Are there certain activities that you've been avoiding, you've been procrastinating, that maybe you can start adding into your diary? It can be a good time to sort of pause the video now and reflect on some examples of activities that you've noticed maybe you've been reducing recently, would benefit from sort of slowly building up again. And here are some sort of helpful reminders that you can have to help when putting them back into your schedule. So writing activities down increases the chances of doing them. So you can write them down on sort of a diary, put it up really nice and clear, somewhere in your house. I tend to find sort of setting little phone alarms can be helpful as little reminders. Just as I mentioned earlier, having that sort of adjusting your new activities around your baby, sticking with the plan despite how you're feeling, pushing through. It's also really helpful to have a balance of activities, making sure that you're not just doing those routine and necessary activities that you have to do, but make sure there's some pleasure activities mixed in, even if they're just small things. They're going to give us that boost. We still need that sense of me time, that sense of enjoyment, because that's what's going to really help ease that just pressure we add on ourselves. It helps us to relax and ease everything. Sometimes think about, is there a combination of goals that you can put together? So maybe one of your goals is spending more sort of time with the baby, but then at the same time, one of your goals is, I need to do the tidying up. Incorporate the two, carry the baby in a carrier and do the tidying up. Or see if there's other ways you can combine two. So maybe it's that you want to do more exercise, but again, the baby's there, or you want to spend some more time with your partner as well. So it could be that together you go on a nice walk outside, that counts as exercise, your partner's there, the baby's there, and you're combining all these goals into one. So sometimes it's just about thinking a little bit creatively about how can I reach these goals? Can I incorporate any of them together to make it a little bit easier, save some time since I'm so limited on time, and sort of start scheduling them into your week in a really nice pace. Don't try and overdo it and do too much at once. You want to start setting sort of little goals each week and then slowly building up as that motivation, that energy, that enjoyment's coming back. An important thing to bear in mind when doing activities and trialing out these techniques is don't be so hard on yourself if you don't get everything done, or even if you don't get anything done. At the same time, whilst you're trying to do these things, you're also trying to raise a baby. And as I mentioned earlier, living well with a baby's very new. You're still learning to adjust to the routine, to the new lifestyle. So if you can't get things done because maybe the baby's having a particularly difficult day, won't go down for a nap, or you're struggling to do anything because the baby just keeps needing you, that's not your fault. You're doing everything you can, you're trying your best, you're prioritising your baby. And if you can't do it because of external reasons, like your baby or other things have come up, then don't be hard on yourself. All we say is when it comes to your mood, if it's your mood that's getting in the way, if it's that, oh, I can't be bothered, or what's the point, that's when we want you to push through and try and get these activities done. But there are other life experiences getting in the way. Just take that step back, be compassionate with yourself, you're trying your best. If you don't do something one day, then plan it for the next day. That's absolutely fine as well. If you haven't been able to do it today, schedule it in for tomorrow, write it in, maybe break it down a little bit more. Maybe it was too big of a task and that's one of the reasons you couldn't do it today. Break it down, schedule it in, and just keep trying. As long as we make sort of small changes, just go each day, things will start getting a little bit easier. Again, don't set too high of an expectation. You're working your way through it. You're making those little steps, and not to have the pun intended, but you're making baby steps. But that's still steps, that's still victory. You're still doing good, you're still making positive changes. So take your time, be kind to yourself, and you'll achieve it before you know it. Next, we're going to look at how to break the cycle via the thoughts. So in particular, anxiety and worry, whether this is negative thoughts you're having or those what if worries that creep in around the time of having a baby. Sometimes when we're stressed, our thoughts can become quite unhelpful. We can all make assumptions about things, which can lead us to come to conclusions about things that we do not know for sure. And these assumptions and unhelpful thinking patterns can lead to negative emotions. When we allow our minds to jump to conclusions and think in unhelpful ways, these ways of thinking can take control, meaning that our emotions are also at the mercy of our automatic thinking. Thinking biases are the unhelpful patterns of thinking that we can all become trapped by. We're now going to look at the most common unhelpful patterns of thinking and see how many you can recognise even within yourself. So first of all, we have what we call compare and despair. This is when we see the good / sort of positive in others, but compare ourselves negatively against them. So for example, the other parents are coping so much better than I am, I'm a failure. This is particularly heightened due to modern day social media. You may see that other parents are posting what seems to be the perfect lives with their newborn, that they're coping really well, but it's important to remember that it's not the true reality. It's just a snippet of their life, and a good snippet at that. Most people aren't going to post about those terrible days we all have, well, nothing's going right. So what we are seeing on social media is just tiny little snippets of good moments that is simply just a fraction of the parenting experience. So it's not fair to compare yourself to those little snippets and compare those snippets to your whole parenting experience, because of course that's going to bring you down. You're going to compare and that's going to make you despair. So it's very common to have this kind of thought habit when having a new baby. Feel free to pause throughout as I'm showing these unhelpful thinking habits and think to yourself, okay, have I done that before? Have I been sort of victim to compare and despair? And if so, how did it make me feel? Then we have catastrophizing. And by catastrophizing, what I mean is it's the idea of imagining and believing that the worst possible thing will happen. So for example, having this horrible thought that my baby will stop breathing unless I constantly check in on her. It's us always going to that worst case scenario. There's no sort of middle ground. It's just jumping to the worst possible thing that can happen, catastrophizing it. And it can be extremely anxiety inducing. Then we have mind reading. This is when we assume we know what others are thinking. So whether this is we're assuming we know what our baby's thinking, some people report having thoughts like, my baby hates me, or sometimes it's thinking about what other people think, a sort of judgment of others, and just assuming that other people think you're a bad parent or they're judging you. We're mind reading, we're assuming that that's what they're thinking, when in reality, most of the time, they're not. It's our negative thoughts projecting onto others. Then we have black and white thinking. And by this, what I mean is it's this whole idea of believing that something or someone can only be good or bad, right or wrong, rather than any in between. So it's that whole idea that if we did something wrong, like we made a little mistake, straight away we jump to, I'm a terrible parent. There's no middle ground. It's either I'm the perfect parent or I'm a terrible parent. And when we have that as that black and white thinking, we can fall into that negative thinking a lot because we're all human, we make mistakes. But if we get stuck in this unhelpful thinking habit, anytime we make the smallest mistake, we're going to think we're the worst. That is, we're going to think that we're a bad person. Then we have the negative filter. And this is when we notice the bad things that happen, but dismiss or forget the positive. So we only ever, it's almost like we have tunnel vision, where we're solely focusing on all the bad things and we're blocking out any good or positive things we've done or have happened that day. So it could be that we've had a really great week, but there was one particular day that we were really, really bad. We may have had a day where we resented having a baby, where everything went wrong. And when we look back at that week, when we have a negative filter, we'll solely focus on that bad day and ignore all the good moments. And when we do that, we're of course going to feel really down and drained, because when we think negatively, we feel negatively. And if we're ignoring all the positives, we've got those blinkers on, we're avoiding them, and they're not going to seep in and make us feel good. A big one people get is critical self. And by critical self, it's this whole notion of putting ourselves down, self-criticism, blaming ourselves for things that are not totally our responsibility. It's just almost being our own personal bully. We're just thinking very much negatively, putting all the blame and responsibility on ourselves, when in reality, that's not the case. But when we put all of that pressure onto us, it can feel like such a weight on our shoulders and a weight on our chest as well. And we can really have that impact on our self-esteem, our confidence. And when we're very critical of ourselves, we doubt ourselves a lot. We don't believe in our capabilities, our sort of ability to cope as well. So then that can make us feel even more stressed and overwhelmed. Then we have the should and must. This is thinking or saying I should, or I shouldn't, or I must. And when we do and say things like that, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. We set up unrealistic expectations and we're setting ourselves up for failure. If we have thoughts like I must always look happy and like I'm coping, if there's ever a moment where we feel sad or overwhelmed, or we're not looking and making sure that we look happy, we're going to suddenly think, oh, I must do that and I haven't, I failed. And we put all of these expectations and they come crumbling down and they make us feel really rotten about ourselves. So if you spend a bit of time now and think, are there any times that you say things like, I should do this, I must do this, I shouldn't do this? And think back to yourself and think, is that fair for me to actually put on myself? So with all those automatic negative thoughts, they can have such an impact on us, and they're within us all. When it comes to automatic thoughts, some tend to be negative, some can be positive, and others are neutral. And within the transition of parenthood and following difficulties of birth, poor sleep, sometimes our thoughts can become more negative. It's understandable. You may notice that when you get a lack of sleep, you are a lot snappier, you're in a worse mood. So when we're also adjusting, getting bad sleep, of course our thoughts are going to start to be a little bit more negative than neutral and positive compared to before we had a baby. So for example, we can notice that, say, if our baby is not settling, we may notice that the negative automatic thought that pops into our head is, I'm never going to manage this, I'm no good. And when we get these negative thoughts, we believe them. They feel so true and so distressing in the moment, and they have such a knock-on effect on how we see ourselves and our self-esteem. And there are a range of different examples. So for example, say I drop a cup of tea and straight away my negative automatic thought is everything is going wrong. That wouldn't necessarily be fair. All I've done is drop a cup of tea, not everything has gone wrong. But in that moment, it's just that automatic response, that automatic feeling, already feeling so overwhelmed that we just overgeneralize it. Again, another one is if the baby's crying, I may have a negative automatic thought that I can't stop the baby crying, I never know what to do for the baby, I'm a bad parent. Again, that one instant of the crying baby struggling to soothe them, we've then made that sweeping notion that I'm a bad parent, I never know what to do for the baby. And these are really hurtful thoughts to have. They're the kinds of thoughts that would upset absolutely anyone. And so spend a bit of time thinking, can you relate to any of these examples that we've gone through so far? Any of those different unhelpful thinking habits or some of these thoughts on the screen? And if so, when you had those thoughts, what actually happened before to trigger them? Did they sort of fit? Looking back on that, do you think that was a fair thought to have? When our thoughts are more negative in such situations, like when our baby's crying, it's really useful to acknowledge these thoughts and try to think about them in a balanced and more alternative way. This doesn't mean I want you to suddenly think more positive, all sunshines and rainbows, because that's just not realistic. But what we want, instead of thinking so automatically negative, instead we want to try and challenge these thoughts and make them more neutral and realistic. So what we use is a technique called cognitive restructuring. And this technique we use is basically to challenge our negative automatic thoughts and improve our mood. By balancing our thought, they're going to help take away those negative feelings that come across with those negative thoughts and help soothe us and not make us feel worse than we already do. So the steps really are to acknowledge the thought I'm having. So I'm noticing that I'm thinking this particular negative thought. So as you can see on the screen, it's I can't stop the baby crying, I never know what to do for the baby, I'm a bad parent. So the idea is you acknowledge that, then have a go at label what unhelpful thinking habit that is. So in this case, it's that black and white thinking. Straight away, it's gone from can't do something, I'm a bad parent. There's either good parents or there's bad parents. And from this negative thought, I'm having black and white thinking I'm only a bad parent. So now that we've acknowledged the thought, we've labelled it with one of those unhelpful thinking habits, what we want to do is weigh up the evidence for and against that thought being true. Because a lot of times when we get these thoughts, we just believe it. We don't even try and challenge it. We believe it, we accept it, it makes us feel absolutely rubbish. So instead we want to challenge it. Think about ways that maybe you could see it differently. Are there ways you can challenge it? What would a friend say to you? Would they agree with this thought? Is there actually any evidence to support that you're a bad parent other than suddenly you can't stop the baby crying right now? What are ways that you are a good parent? What are things that you're good at? What can you, almost like what are your strengths? And just try and weigh up the evidence. And once we start taking that step back and seeing things from a wider perspective, we can then make more of a neutral, challenged response. So from doing that sort of exercise of challenging your thought, we've gone from I can't stop the baby crying, I never know what to do for the baby, I'm a bad parent, to the baby is very upset, but I'm going to continue to try to figure out what he needs. This is not easy, but I'm doing my best. We want balanced alternatives for that thought. So for example, what are other reasons the baby could be crying? Maybe it's not because I'm a bad parent, maybe they're just bored, or they're tired, they're too hot or cold, they're hungry, they're thirsty, their nappy's full, maybe they have wind. And these are normal responses and normal reasons for a baby to cry. It's not very likely that the baby's crying because I'm a bad parent, because I can't do anything right. We need to be able to learn to give ourselves a break. It's not easy. You're dealing with a human that can't voice what's wrong with them, so they just cry. And normally when people are upset with us, they'll just tell us with words what's the matter, and we can solve it, we can fix it. With a baby, it can be hard to distinguish, and we can't put the blame on ourselves. We're trying to figure it out. And so there's other sort of thoughts that you can think about challenging. So a thought that could come up is, I'm failing my children or my child for not taking them to meet other children. You may be really struggling to find the time, you've got a busy, hectic schedule, so because you can't take your child to meet other children, you may think, oh, I'm failing. But in reality, if you use this sort of cognitive restructuring, you try to challenge that thought, you may be able to come up with, actually, I love my child, I'm meeting all of her needs. Just because I couldn't manage to go to the baby class today, that's okay, I'll try again next week, it was a difficult day. Doesn't mean I'm a bad parent or that I'm failing. It's all about trying to find ways that you can adjust, you can challenge, you can rearrange these thoughts so they're not just completely negative. They're not that black and white thinking. We want to find ways to chip away at it. How else can we see the situation? What's an alternative viewpoint of this? Some tips to help with this are particularly asking, what would you say to a friend in the same situation? It's very easy to be compassionate to a friend. It's not so easy to be compassionate with ourselves. So sometimes just spin the narrative. If your friend came up to you and said that they're a failure because they couldn't take their baby to the baby class, what would you respond to them? You'd most likely say exactly as I said above. You're trying your best, you love your child. Just because you didn't go this week, you can try again next week. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent. You can also think about, what would your family say? What was the last occasion you had this thought, and was it true? Have you had this thought before and since? Has there been things that have challenged it? What are good things about you as a parent? What are you good at? What does your baby have? Always think about the things that are good within your life. So what I want you to do is pause the video now and think what you would say to a loved one who has said this negative thought. So it could be the negative thought that I have up on the screen, or it could be a negative thought that you've had recently. And just think to yourself, okay, that's a negative thought. What would a family member or a friend say to me if I had this thought? What would I say to them if they had this thought? And that will really help with different perspectives. So I'm going to give you a bit of time now to pause and think about that. Along with having negative thoughts, we can also experience a lot of worry, particularly during pregnancy and after birth. Having a baby and parenthood is full of unknowns and uncertainty, and sometimes we can feel completely out of control, and that of course is going to lead us to worry. You may notice what if thoughts. What if I don't know what my baby needs? What if they don't stop crying? What if I do the wrong thing? What if the baby gets ill? We may even have thoughts like, what if I can't cope? What if people think I'm a bad mum? What if the baby doesn't like me? And these thoughts can really just play on our mind, and they can get stuck in our mind and really take us away from enjoying the present moment, because we can always get a bit like a spiral response. They just come flooding in, and they can really, really hurt our feelings. So have again just a moment, pause the video and think to yourself, what kind of worries have you noticed since having a baby? Maybe during pregnancy or after birth, as they're growing up. What if worries do you tend to notice in your mind? When we worry, we overthink and we get a lot of what if thoughts, and this can lead to a lot of changes in our behaviour. We can get in what we call the cycle of worry. So just as we had that cycle of low mood and depression earlier, we can also have cycles of anxiety and worry. We get those what if thoughts, those worries, what if I can't cope, what if something's wrong with the baby? This can then lead to those physical sensations of anxiety. So we might notice heart racing, feeling really on edge, feeling quite shaky, even nausea at times. Even panic as well can set in. And then as a result, we notice changes to our behaviour. We may notice that we really start to ruminate on these worries. We may try to attempt to feel certainty and control by doing things like seeking reassurance, constantly checking, excessively planning for things that may or may not happen, Googling a lot, seeking reassurance from sort of loved ones, asking them what they think, and just getting it caught up in that spiral of worry. And what happens is this just goes round and round. We get those worries, we get those horrible physical sensations of anxiety. It impacts how we go about our day, our behaviours. We then get even more worries, and it just goes round and round, and we can feel so caught up and stuck. And when it comes to these behaviours, how they maintain anxiety is basically some things in our life we just can't control, but they sort of keep us stuck in our mind. They take away our attention from the present moment. We might be trying to enjoy the present time of sort of quality time with the baby or a partner, or simply just alone time. We may finally have a bit of me time or it's time to relax, but instead our minds decide, no, this is the great time to just worry about anything and everything. And it really prevents the opportunity for our brain to learn that we can cope without this need to worry, because we think in our minds, if I worry about it, if it happens, I'll feel so much more prepared. But in reality, most of the time when we worry, they don't happen. They're those what if worries that may or may not happen, and they tend not to happen. And then we look back and we think, I've just wasted all that time worrying about something that never happened when I could have been relaxing or enjoying my time with my baby, enjoying my time with my partner. So we can get so caught up and trapped in this cycle. So here's an example of a sort of worry trap. So we first have those thoughts of, what if the baby's sick? What if he never stops crying? What if I'm not producing enough milk? What if I miss something and cause him harm? This then leads to those physical symptoms of feeling tense, poor sleep, headaches, agitated, and then the behaviours that come about: seeking reassurance, frequently checking on the baby, worrying more, really ruminating. And in turn, when we ruminate on these worries, more worries come about. We start that spiral. We get more worries, we get more of those physical sensations, and it keeps impacting us. So again, I just want you to spend a little bit of time now and think about, do you have your own cycle of anxiety? What do you notice when you have a worry? How does it physically make you feel? How does it impact your behaviours? What do you tend to do to try and cope? And just spend that time acknowledging it, because again, how we can break these cycles is by first identifying them and making the positive changes that will help. So here are some helpful ways to challenge these thoughts and help break out of that cycle. Just as we mentioned earlier with the low mood cycle, where we were breaking in via your behaviours, doing more to feel better, we want to be able to break into the anxiety cycle as well. And how we do this is we challenge our thoughts and how we think about and respond to them. A lot of our worries and negative thoughts come from self-doubt. And practicing positive self-talk and being more compassionate with ourselves is important in times of stress. The way in which we talk to ourselves has a huge impact on our well-being. Think about just the tone you're using with yourself, not even just the words. Sometimes the way we say things to ourselves can really impact us and how we're feeling. Think about times where maybe someone's talked to you in a not very nice way, whether it's the words they've said or the tone they've used, and how it made you feel. It's the exact same when we talk to ourselves that way. It's going to have that negative impact on our emotions, our feelings. So we want to focus on how we can break this. We focus so much on the negatives in life and dismiss the positives. We worry about all the bad things that could happen. We talk down on ourselves, but there are changes we can make to help reduce the impact this has on us. So think about saying what you're grateful for. Some people like to keep what we call like a gratitude journal, where they write down all the things they're grateful for. So instead of only ever focusing on those negatives, whether it's the bad things, the worries that may or may not happen, all those worst case scenarios, instead take that step back and try and balance it out by thinking about the things that you are grateful for. Help balance out that stress and negativity we experience. Yes, maybe you struggled to get the baby to sleep today. Maybe you've had a really bad day, but you may have also made the baby smile today.
And that's something to be grateful for. That's something that went well. So even though there may be a range of things that didn't go so well, or mistakes you made, there are still going to be things that you did good today, no matter how small. It's important to recognize those. Give credit where credit is due. So again, yes, you may not have been able to get all the washing done today, but you did get to spend quality time with your partner and baby. So even though you weren't able to do all the routine stuff you wanted to do, you did use that time for something that was good, that was positive. So again, don't be so hard on yourself. Don't worry about all the things that need doing. Also take that step back and think, okay, that yeah, there are things that need doing, but this is what I did today. This is what I'm proud of. This was good. Also, it can be good to really think about what your strengths are, not just your weaknesses. What did you do well today? What do people like about you? What do friends say about you? Again, it's so easy to be so nice and compassionate to the people we love, seeing them for the good in them. Everyone's got bad things about them, everyone makes mistakes, but when it comes to us as individuals, we tend to focus on the negative when it comes to us, but to others, we can balance it out. We can think about the things we love about them, things that are good about them. We want to be able to do that to us as well. So think about what it is that your friends would say about you. What do they like about you? Sort of see it from their perspective. And just as those negative thoughts and worries we get impact our mood, so can positive thoughts, encouraging thoughts. It'll help balance it out. Because when we have these negative automatic thoughts, we have these worries of all the bad things that can happen. It makes us feel low. It makes us feel overwhelmed and anxious. So why can't positive thoughts and encouraging thoughts have an emotional impact on us as well? Because they do. We're less likely to say good things about ourselves because we're so focused on all the bad things. So it's good to try and balance it out. Try purposefully saying something positive. Get it into your routine. Some people find it really helpful to have little words of affirmation dotted around the house. So it might just be little words of encouragement that when you're having a bad day, you can look up and on your fridge, there's some positive things. It could be things you like about yourself, or just simply encouraging quotes that you find really helpful, that boost you, that keep you going. Also, just acknowledge you're having a negative thought, acknowledge you're worrying, and then be compassionate with yourself. Of course you're worrying, of course you're having a negative thought. You're running low on sleep, you're adjusting your whole life around this little life you've made. It's going to be challenging, but don't let it bring you down. Find ways to boost yourself back up, break that cycle. It's easy to get caught in those cycles and we just push through them and we just live with them, and we don't have to. There are ways that we can break out of them. And it's that whole idea that nothing changes if nothing changes. If we just allow these thoughts and these worries and these horrible feelings to come bombarding over us, then we're going to remain in that cycle. We're going to remain feeling low and overwhelmed. So by making these small little changes can really make the world of wonder. So we're now coming to the end of the workshop, and I just want to say you're doing such a great job at what is possibly the hardest job in the world. So I really want you to know that you need to be kind to yourself, and it's always important to have some words of encouragement. So I really want you to take away from this session that you should really share how you feel with someone you trust. It can be a friend, a partner, a loved one. It can even be just your health visitor or link worker. Don't suffer in silence. If you're noticing that you're struggling with your anxiety or struggling with your mood, talk to someone. There are some really fantastic parent and toddler groups that are available. And at the end of today's session, I'll sort of have a slide on signposting that you can have a look at. But go sort of join in with other parents, because we feel so alone in these times, especially when it's like those midnight feeds and we think that everything we're experiencing, we feel so alone and so isolated. But there are millions of people going through the exact same thing as you are. So talk to them, have that space where you can share and feel connected. It's also important to know that you only have to be a good enough parent. No one's perfect. I know everyone puts these ideas in your head that you have to be perfect, you have to be amazing. But you're doing amazing. Even if you're not perfect, you're good enough. You're taking care of your baby. The fact that you're even here today watching this workshop is showing just how much you care about your baby and your well-being. So you're doing a good job, and don't let those negative thoughts or worries cloud your judgment. Mental health difficulties are common in the perinatal period, so pregnancy and after birth, but just know it will pass. It's okay not to be okay. You're going through this whole big life adjustment. It's going to be difficult. It's going to have all those changes we spoke about. So of course there's going to be difficulties we face. But you don't have to go through them alone. You can seek further help if you need it. There are people who can support you. Our service, there are other services, there are sort of parent toddler groups, as I mentioned. There's lots of people who are out there to help you, even just family and friends. Talk to them, communicate how you're feeling. So here are some support services that you can reach out to. What I recommend is pausing the video here and taking a picture or a screenshot so that you can sort of go back to it any time, have it in your camera roll, it's easy to hand. But it's just people that you can reach out to. There's sort of health visitors, early help support. There's some really fantastic services such as Mush, and they can help out with sort of setting up groups of sort of mums that you can talk to. There's Epic Dads, where you can talk to other dads about how you're feeling, get some support. Crisis is a lovely service that helps people whose babies are crying a lot and they're really struggling with sort of the crying. They can help offer advice and support. So there's some really fantastic services out there, and a lot of times we don't know about them. We just sort of go through life, go through the struggle, but in reality there are so many people who are out there who can help, and they're all free and available to help at any time. So yeah, take a screenshot, pause the video, take a picture and look into it. There's some really fantastic services out there.
And of course, you can also access further support from our team at any time. We offer a variety of different support options, which I will go through with you now. So Wellbeing Suffolk offers people experiencing low mood, stress and anxiety support for a range of therapies. We offer support in groups and in one-to-one sessions. We have online workshops. Most of what we offer is based on a type of therapy called cognitive behavioural therapy, or CBT for short, which is something that I'll explain in a moment in a bit more detail. The techniques we covered today were actually CBT based. However, the Wellbeing Service does also offer access to counselling as well. Today will act as a good taster of the types of support we can offer in the Wellbeing Service. As we go along, we'll tell you how the tips and advice we are giving you are built on and worked on in more depth within the Wellbeing Service. So CBT is an active short-term talking therapy that looks at the vicious cycles we can get caught in and teaches evidence-based techniques of how to break out of them. So similar as to what we did today, but with CBT we can offer one-to-one sessions, which is where you'd work one-to-one with a PWP, so someone with a similar role to myself, who would be able to help you understand your own vicious cycles, your own experiences of mental health, and in turn teach you evidence-based tools and techniques that you can apply into your day-to-day life to help break out of them. They're really fantastic when it comes to CBT because it's almost like teaching you a little toolkit of what you can use at any time whenever you notice anxiety or low mood is really starting to interfere with your day-to-day life. So we have high intensity CBT, we have guided self-help, low intensity CBT. We can offer it via telephone, video call, sometimes we can do face-to-face as well. As well as this, we can also offer peer support whilst referred to our service. By peer support, what I mean is we have a group of individuals who have been hired specifically because of their lived experience of mental health and their own personal recovery. So we can refer you to a peer mentor who can talk to you about their own experiences, talk to you about your experiences, and in turn help share their own recovery journeys and help promote some hope and sort of guidance. They're employed specifically as a result of their lived experience, and they can really help to motivate and encourage people within the service, especially if you're particularly nervous or unsure of talking therapy and support. They can really help put your mind at ease. As well as this, we have a really lovely team of employment advisors within our service who can help provide advice and guidance around the barriers people may face in relation to work. They can help when it comes to returning to work after a period of absence. They can help when it comes to work-based difficulties, liaise with sort of your employers, anyone who's really struggling with work to help remain in work. But also they can help when it comes to finding new work, help with CV support, helping you get sort of a job and a career that you're wanting to do. Really help, because when it comes to our employment, our careers, our jobs, they can have a massive impact on our well-being. So yeah, we have a team that can also help with that, which are free to access when you refer into our service as well. And if you're interested, you can also pause the screen now and scan these QR codes. We have a range of social and community events available as well. They're hosted in person, on Zoom, MS Team, and they're available for anyone. Everyone's welcome to join them if they would like to.
If you'd like further support from our team, then we are happy to help you. We're here to help at any time. You can self-refer to our service via our website. So again, pause the screen now if you want to scan whether you're Norfolk-based, Suffolk-based. You can also get your GP who can refer you to us as well. And what we can do is when you self-refer to us, we'll set up an assessment where you'll speak to a PWP, again, such as myself, in which we'd go through your main difficulties. We'll get a nice idea of sort of what's going on, how we can help, and make a plan, whether it's a one-to-one approach, online workshops, peer support, employment support. There's a variety of different things that we can do to help. So if at any time you feel you need further support, then refer on over and we'll be happy to have you. Well, that brings us to our final slide of the presentation. So thank you so much for watching today. I hope you found it helpful, any tips and tricks that you might take away. As mentioned before, feel free to come back and watch this video as many times as you want to. You can pause it, write things down, apply it into your day-to-day life. And if you ever need any further support, then you're free to refer to us at any time. We're happy to help. But yeah, I just really want you to take away from today's session that you're doing a good job. It's so normal to experience difficulties, but know that you're not alone and there are things that can be done to help people who are there to support you. You just have to reach out and we'd be happy to help, and I'm sure other services would be as well.